Fresh and
All right, welcome back to another episode of Fresh and Buds. It is episode 50, and I am beyond stoked to have with me today a bud from the very beginning, my first guest ever, Mr. Taylor Morrow of the Attack Action Podcast, aka the Battle Bro Taylor, aka the Falcon of the West. How are you, Taylor?
I'm doing great. Thank you for that intro. You really brought the heat on that one, and I feel like I'm blushing, or it's just the mild sunburn I maybe have from working in the yard. Thank you for having me on. It's so cool. Congratulations to you for 50 episodes. That's incredible. I'm stoked to be back. Would be back more often.
I
But
am
maybe
stoked
that's boring. I don't know.
No. I'm stoked to have you here. You know, when I was looking at the numbers, I'm like, oh wow, 50's coming up. I thought about, it could have been anybody, but like I thought, who better than you, Taylor, and the reason I wanted you here is because it was like episode 3 you came on, and you didn't have to, right? You could have just been like, who's this scrub? It was true then. It's true now. I'm still a scrub, but you could have been like, screw this guy. I'm not coming on the podcast, and you did, and that was, I'm beyond grateful because it was the first. You were the first person I ever asked or had like the balls to ask, and it was awesome.
Well, thank you for asking me. I mean, truly, I would do more people's podcasts if they asked me, because doing other people's podcasts is the best because I don't have to do any of the other stuff. I don't have to schedule. I don't have to edit. All I got to do is just show up, hang out, talk, and then go on with my life, So
it is
let
nice,
everybody
right?
know. I'll come on your podcast. Yeah.
Well, you heard it here first, folks. Ask Taylor to be on your podcast. He's a wonderful guest, and
Thanks.
But before we get into the episode, I do want to thank the Patreon, and if anybody would like to check out the Patreon, it is in the show notes. I post like some bonus eps, where I'm talking behind some jazz music, and it's all really silly and stupid, and it's usually at like 3 a.m. because I can't sleep. If you want to check it out, it helps me keep the mics hot and the lights on, and and every bit helps, but obviously not required. So I do want to get back to you here, Taylor. First of all, how have you been?
Boy, I'm tired. So we have been just going for it this month. Friend of ours and friend of the pod, Mitch, got married at the beginning of the month, and then me and my wife went on a nice vacation together, and then I got back, and then we went straight to LA for the Battle Hardened in LA, and that was like a 4-day trip, and then home for 3 days, and then boom, final week of road to Nats. So July has just been traveling and partying and been living the life. I'm telling you, it's been great, but I am now very tired.
I feel that. I feel like July is just that kind of month, right? I was in kind of a similar, always traveling and then like road to Nats, and it just doesn't stop for us flesh and blood podcasters, right? Speaking
Totally.
of podcasts, how is the Attack Action Podcast doing, and anything new and exciting on that front for you guys?
Well, we just did a fun kind of roundtable discussion collaboration with OK and Y podcast, minus the K, but we had the O and the Y. So Oliver and Yeachin, they're like Bay Area legends in the Flesh and Blood community. They have a really great like YouTube channel, and a little podcast that they do. And so we did a video with them and other NorCal native France, and we did little whiskey tastes and then just talked flesh and blood the whole time, basically. So it was hella fun. I'd never sat down and tasted like 7 different whiskeys in a row, or and really had been with somebody who was passionate about that, and so that was fun. And the like hangs and conversation were really fun. Oliver and Yeechin are super cool, just a couple of sweeties. I don't know if they care that I call them sweeties or not, but they are.
Well, they have no choice, and they're not here to defend themselves of the sweetie title. Now, were you guys all in the same room for this?
Yeah, Oliver was really nice. So like for the listeners at home, if you're not familiar with our podcast, we live in the middle of nowhere, Northern California. So the joke, right, is people will ask us where we're from, and we'll say we're from NorCal, and they'll be like, "Oh, San Francisco," and we'll say, "No, 5 hours farther north." And they're like, "Wait, isn't that Oregon?" I'm like, "Well, almost, but it's not quite." So for us, for any events, we have to travel those 5 hours minimum to go to anything. So we were down at the Oliver and Yeechin's hood, and Oliver let us stay over at his apartment, and then we did this video after one of the Road to Nationals. So we try to hit up like the weekends where there's 2 in a row. There's one like Saturday, Sunday, to get the most bang for our buck. So yeah.
Well, that sounds pretty awesome, and I can't wait to check it out. I did see you post it today in Discord, and I am excited to check it out. It sounds like a good time. I love whiskey, and I love booze in general. Actually, it's a problem. Let's be honest. No, I'm kidding. But no, that sounds awesome, and anybody talking about flesh and blood is awesome, and that's why we're here. Speaking of your busy July, you recently casted the Battle Hardened Los Angeles. Tell us about that experience.
It was a ton of fun. So I was like a little nervous about it, like kind of maybe the morning of. But then once we kind of got there, the crew who was putting it on, Justin, who was the TO, he actually like started a whole like event company for this Battle Hardened, so he can like continue to like kind of grow that side of the game for himself or whatever. So he was a great leader. He was very calm and very clear about all of his expectations. So that like kind of squashed all kind of nerves right away. And then, me and Isaac, who's my co-host on the Attack Action podcast, got to do it with our producer Colin, who lives in LA, and then another local, Blake Meyer. And it was a ton of fun. There's like, you can feel that there is a bit of an some artistry to it. Like you have to be able to fill one of the roles, whether you're doing the play-by-play or the analysis, and try not to talk over one another, and be entertaining all at the same time, but informative. But after maybe like my first game, I was like, oh, cool. Now I'm warmed up. I understand how kind of the flow of this and the structure of this is going to work. And I would love to do it again. I thought it was a ton of fun, and it seemed like the audience really liked it. And so hopefully I can continue to get those opportunities, and, not to take anything away from anybody who's already doing those jobs, but it seems like a no-brainer to have podcasters who are also players do the commentating for those sort of things.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's we do have some folks out there who are obviously professional casters, right? They do a great job. Tannen, Flake, and the Brian Gottlieb as well, and that's great. And I love the fact, though, when the Battle Hardened Los Angeles was announced, and then it was announced that you guys were going to be on the casting team. I thought that was a great example of some smaller scale stuff that we can start to see some casting from folks like you and Isaac. And I'll be honest with you, I tuned in and I thought you were doing a great job. And although I think I tuned in right around when the alarm went off or something.
Oh yeah.
I was like,
Jeez.
I had to like scroll back to like kind of watch some of the older stuff because I hadn't really caught up to when you guys had come back from the
Jeez.
unexpected break. Can you tell us a little bit about what happened there? I only saw it, just peripherally.
Yeah, I'm unsure what it was particularly related to, but it was a weird, so like in the middle of one of the rounds, the fire alarm went off or the alarm went off. But what was really weird about it wasn't just an alarm, it was like an automated voice came on and said that there was like an imminent threat in the building or something like that. It talked in a language that made it seem that it was like a bomb or an active shooter situation, that it wasn't just like a fire. So I was like, whoa, this is some strong language from this robot. Now I'm worried. But then it like quickly, like 40 seconds went by and then we got like the no wave from it's fine, everything's okay from, the staff that was there. But people had like scooped up their game, you know, and it's like the middle of the round. And so some people had to like restart their round all over. So that was like kind of upsetting, but like, what else are you going to do? Now, the second story that goes along with this is that there was a jewelry event happening at the convention center that day also. And what had happened is that some jewelers went in on an armored truck to transport some jewels over there. And it got robbed. Somebody robbed the armored truck. It was like $150 million or something. Maybe my figure is wrong, but it was a buttload of money that just got robbed out of this armored truck.
Oh my God. So, I mean, to sum it up, not only was Phi bringing the heat, but the movie Heat was happening at the same time at
Yeah,
the
I know,
convention
right?
center,
Yeah.
which is like absolutely insane. Now, I do want to go back to like what you said about some of the players had to restart their rounds, which does suck, but it is one of those things where like, what are you supposed to do? This is like such
Right.
such a what's the word, situation that we would never expect. And as far as I could tell, which was kind of cool because usually when something like that happens, chat goes crazy and then they're like,
Yeah.
this is what kind of event is this? But it seemed like everybody was actually pretty like understanding, as bad as it was, because it was very annoying. But and maybe it was some of your wordsmithing on the mics that kind of calm the rabble down, made sure they did not
Yeah.
get too roused.
Maybe. I mean, it cut to my face and you're just kind of like trying to smile through it and like keep an ear to the like your TO who's trying to like cue you in on like what's happening and that sort of thing. But yeah, it was kind of wild for your first event. There was like kind of a lot of action that was what's the word? Just unprecedented, kind
Mm-hmm.
of behind the scenes the whole day. So, but other than that, it ran pretty smooth, but it made for a really long day because they restarted the round. So we were supposed to have 6 rounds. So it's like we had 7+ rounds and then top 8. So it
That
was challenging.
Yeah, that is very brutal. Now, while you were behind the booth there and calling these games, were you actively thinking about how this meta was unfolding for yourself? Because it was a very fresh meta, and still is to a certain extent. But while you were casting, it was like one of the more freshest CC events we've had, were you consciously kind of like, oh wow, like not really expecting to see this deck, or were you kind of just kind of in the zone, kind of calling it?
Well, that's a great question, and way to be a professional podcast interviewer. Come a long way since episode 3.
Oh, I listened back a little bit, and yes, brutal.
Yeah, I don't listen to any of the old episodes for us. I did have some people who like have enjoyed going back through them, and it's like kind of a history of the metas and that sort of thing. But I'm like, no way, I can't do it. It probably is terrible. But
Yeah.
so to your question, uh, the most interesting thing that we noted quite a few times. Also, thank you for tuning into the stream. I really appreciate that. That's very cool.
If buds are on the stream, I'm gonna watch. You know, that's
Hell yeah.
them's the rules.
True homie. uh, the so the big glaring thing that was happening was that people who were specialists in their hero were just crushing because they just kind of knew how their deck worked, their hero worked, even into uh the new heroes like Fi or Dromai or Icelander or whatever. That they were doing just fine because they understood how well their deck worked. And if you both like don't know how that matchup goes, then the person who's just like better at playing their deck really has an edge. So that was kind of like the big takeaway for me, was that we had Allen on Bolton just like makes top 8 in the Battle Hardened, and was slaying people all day. And Graham, I believe his name is, who like just basically plays Rhinar and went X and 1 in Swiss and also made top 8. And there were some other people who were like definitely specialists, like Andrew plays a ton of Prism, and he did really well, but that was a bit more of a meta deck, so that wasn't super surprising. The other thing I thought was pretty interesting was that Fi did not make top 8 in the Battle Hardened, and kind of like actually seemed to have underperformed that week. Or not that entire week, but just at our event. But there was, rumblings of it, becoming better and that sort of thing. So it didn't, I thought, excuse me, personally, I thought we were going to see some stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like that somebody was going to figure something out, and we were going to, that was maybe going to be its like coming out party. But I suppose that the Battle Hardened is maybe just still a step too low compared to something like we see in Utrecht, where there's like a calling and it's kind of a bigger event and that sort of thing. But I had not gotten to, gosh, I'm just monologuing here because it's not my
You're
podcast.
Go. This is your runway, my friend.
Whoosh! That's me taking off. So I hadn't gotten to participate because we had been busy the previous 2 weekends of Road to National season. So I was unsure of how far it had moved. Did you get to play did you play every weekend? So you kind of got like a bit of a, oh, I don't know, like timestamps, or like the meta's here, week 2, the meta's here, etc. as you like went through?
To be honest, I played one CC RTN and one draft RTN because I had been traveling quite a bit, and I just followed the meta kind of based on results on Twitter and stuff like that. And I'm playing in the Instant Speed podcast tournament that Flake is holding on his Discord, and I've played 2 Fis. It's basically kind of like I know people are trying to make Fi work, and it sounds like coming out of the calling this past weekend that Fi is the real deal. Now this is a lot of speculation, I believe, still in terms of how strong Fi will be going forward, but certainly explosive. To me feels a little bit like a glass cannon of sorts. Now I could be far off on it, but personally. I feel like as a Levi player, I feel actually good into the 5 matchup, but I've seen other people who also play Levi don't feel the same way. So it's hard to say. I think there's a lot of unanswered questions right now in terms of what the hell's going on, really.
Right. So, like, would you say, how do you feel about the data we get from Utrecht? Like, do you trust that really well? Did you follow any of that, like, kind of Twitter coverage and that sort of thing? Did you follow any of that?
I did. Now I saw the conversion rates and stuff like that. The one big one I saw was actually, Levi had the 50% conversion rate into day 2. One of the two players made it to day 2, and that was the best conversion rate as far as I could tell. So, who's to say? But I did notice that Prism had a great conversion rate and a lot of players, but did not make top 8. Now, it seemed like also day 2 was littered with Briars, Viserais, and Phis.
Right.
And something I've always noticed and kind of I think is remains to be true whenever there's a new format is the aggro deck will be the most popular, like, to start out. Now, I think we're going to see a reactionary meta coming up with lots of Oldhams and unfortunately lots of pummels, and I think pummel is going to like run rampant against these like low to the ground go wide decks. At least that's my initial take on it. Is that something that you would expect?
Well, I guess two things. So one, I think Utrecht is interesting because it's a mixed format, right? So there's draft thrown in there. So the kind of potential high placement somebody could get could be based on how well they're doing in draft. And somebody might have like the best CC deck. I mean, I think this is unlikely, right? But and then do really poorly in the draft, and so we don't really get to see it as a deck that's like performing really well. But to the other point is like, yeah, I think that people are gonna hop on now that the field seems to be narrowing a little bit, that people are gonna definitely be hopping on the train to kind of counter that, or at least tailor their favorite deck to kind of their sideboard to handle the more narrow meta, because that's been the hardest thing, has been like, well, I don't know, I could see Dorinthia, Prism, Phi, Viserai, Oldhim, Lexi, like all in the same tournament, and how do I have the time to develop plans into all of those, and how do I have enough sideboard space for all of that too? So, yeah, we'll see some reactionary stuff. I guarantee people in like Viserai are going to start running like Reek of Corruption and consuming Volition and that sort of thing, which historically has not worked out great in combating like aggressive decks. So we'll see if it works this time, though. It's a different game now.
It definitely. I do think Phi is kind of unique in that aspect that it is a little more weak or vulnerable to some kind of disruption than some of the other insane aggro decks we've seen in the past year. But it will be interesting to see. And I think a lot of what you just said about you could see any deck, right, in a tournament goes back to what you were saying about if you know your deck, if you've stuck to your guns on your deck, it's probably going to be a net positive for you in a tournament field. Now, speaking of crazy aggro decks over the past year and all kinds of stuff, we are at episode 50 and we have not spoken. Well, we've spoken. I was on the Attack Action podcast. We've chatted, but we have not been on this podcast together since episode 3, very, very long time ago. Now, a lot has happened in Flesh and Blood since then. I mean, almost like a lifetime's worth of stuff has happened in this game since we last spoke. And we've seen the release of 2 booster sets, 1 supplemental set, as well as some pretty exponential growth in the game.
3 sets have come out since I was on the podcast.
Yeah, because when you were on, we were taking a look at Tales of Aria, but Tales was not out yet.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. And it's crazy, a long time ago.
We were just young men then.
Yeah. Oh God. Yeah. I feel a lot older. That's for sure. Now we're in your mind. I guess we'll go through each one and kind of talk about whether you think they were a success for the game. Now, the first one is Tales of Aria. Do you find that Tales of Aria was a success?
Like just in, yeah, I mean, it totally was, you know. We get Briar, you know, basically that set drops, and then you could argue, you know, that almost all 3 of those heroes were instantly impactful in the meta, you know. And so that's like pretty successful. I think it depends also how you look at it. Like, was it a really fun draft to do? Yeah, I think the gameplay, that's where my critique comes in Tales of Aria, is that the draft gameplay is like a little too fast and uninteractive. It's like as soon as you get to 10 health, you're dead, you know? And so that makes it like kind of tough. But the decisions in the draft while drafting the cards, I think is really, really, really fun. And then, you know, so, and then you can like instantly you can jump into the game at that point, and now you can have some, you know, love for one of those heroes that you started the game with, and they're actually viable and good. It does kind of hurt, I think, the, you know, people who are on, you know, heroes previous, who their favorite hero is like maybe Dash or Azalea. I mean, poor RIP Azalea. It's never coming back. You know, sorry everybody. And, you know, or like Dorinthia or stuff. Like playing those heroes was like pretty tough during that time. But I would say overall, yes, it was a hit.
Yeah. I would agree with you. Yeah, and you know, I find that the limited format was fun. I actually would gladly pick it up and draft it at any chance I get, especially post errata. To be honest, post errata on Briar is like so much better, and it was a hit, and you know, to be honest, initially I was a little worried about the aesthetic, but it grew on me, you know, because you know, when I came into the game, it was like tail end of Monarch. We had seen these brutal art and stuff from like Crucible, and all that stuff was like intense. And then we was like, what is this? It's like, it hurts my eyes. It's too bright, you know? But it grew on me. And I mean, I think we have people who are playing the game that are diehard Briar, Oldham, and Lexi people, which is a great sign that all 3 are fan favorites to a certain degree.
Totally. I think Oldham too is like the most iconic character out of that set too. Like he's this big, old, slow mountain of a person, and or at least maybe it speaks to me much more potentially out of those 3 heroes. He feels really iconic, and I totally agree with you tonally how the game changes when Tales of Aria comes out. Like there's no and it was so jarring, right, lore wise too, because we're having this like insane battle where basically, you know, demons are invading the mortal plane, and then it was like, you know, now we're in Aria and we're just hanging out. Yeah, we're in the woods and we're in the snow, and you know, it's pretty chill over here. It's fine, I guess, you know? But it's like there's just this giant war raging and we're not doing anything about it. So it was jarring.
Yeah, it felt like, you know, very like, oh, we're taking a break from the brutality of the game, though, you know, for whatever reason, we did get cards that were unbelievably brutal for the gameplay. You know, thinking of Oak and Old and Channel Mountain Heroic and stuff like that. So, Yeah, I think Tails was a success. Now, here's one that it might toe the line of success, at least for me, is
Mm.
Everfest was the supplemental set that came out
Yeah.
in February. It brought us Starvo. It brought us also a lot of really cool cards for classes that we've been messing around with. How do you feel about Everfest?
Uh, I guess I have mixed feelings. So from like a an aesthetic standpoint, I think it's really cool, like all of the trinkets and amulets and how those are all cold foil. Like that was really cool and pretty fun, and it had this like circus party atmosphere, which was also very fun. But in I guess in terms of like, I don't know, its effect on the meta, it was like, not great. I mean, so the Starvo meta is like really hard to, for me anyway, to be on one side or the other. Like, honestly, you really had like three, maybe four, like really competitive decks, which
Mm-hmm.
is pretty sweet. You know what I mean? But at the same time, like it also kind of sucked and was oppressive. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
And was like we're getting fatigue at this point, like third set in a row where we just release a broken hero. Like, come on, is this like the game we have to like deal with now? So I would say it was not a hit, I suppose, in terms of like, you know, I don't know how much more fun the game got. It did not get more fun.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm kind of on that train with you. Now there are some really like shining stars that came from Everfest for sure. Like, I just off the top of my head, Swing Big was just like a cool card
Yeah.
to throw out for
Yeah.
the brutes, and it became like an instant staple. However, it was weird to me that they kind of did this weird support for, and I understand they have to support these heroes, but they did this weird support for the young heroes from Crucible. That, like, if you look
Yeah.
at like all the brute stuff, and I know I'm just gonna just harp on brute for
No, no, it's good.
2 hours,
Yeah. Yeah.
but like KO got like a bunch of stuff, which is cool, but like I don't know, what are you gonna do for Reinar and Levia, like outside of Swing Big and stuff like that. So it didn't really feel that supplemental. And I think the fact that they put Starvo in there did not feel supplemental either. It
Yeah.
was kind of like, oh, we're going to supplement all these class cards or all these talent cards from Arya and also have a broken hero that, I don't know. It was
Yeah.
mixed bag for me for sure, but also any set that I can't draft, I'm not a huge fan of, like out the gate, because
Yeah.
why I don't even want to buy product as much, if that makes sense.
Totally.
But
Yeah,
but
I buy less of the supplemental stuff because then I'll just get the singles because that's like, just way better. And yeah, I totally hear you about like for Warrior, we get a ton of like single-handed weapon support, which was cool, but it's still like not enough to make it really, really viable. Like the only CC hero that uses two one-handed weapons is Bolton, and nothing was light hero traded. So it's really hard for Bolton to want to use those anyway. So uh yeah, there's like some for sure hits. Like the Rune Blades got a bunch of new cards that were really good. Uh, Mechanologist, I know people are really using the Teclo Pounder and T-Bone. Shout out to our spoiler card. And what other cards are there? There's like, I don't know if Ranger really got that much stuff, like kind of, I think. Well,
Har-
maybe not.
hardly. I mean, with Dreadbore and like
Yeah, nobody.
battering. What was it?
Fatigue
Battering
shot.
bolt. Fatigue shot. Oh
Yeah,
yeah, fatigue
fatigue
shot. It
shot.
was a
They're
great
running
addition.
fatigue.
Yeah.
And then 100 wins and ninja, right? Like people are definitely running that. So there were like useful cards, but on a whole, it's like, nobody's really using them. So, but I mean, I guess that's also part of the supplemental set. Like, not as big of a hit as Crucible. Like, Crucible instantly filled gaps
Mm-hmm.
that we needed. So, we will see as the game goes on how well Everfest ages. So far, aging poorly.
Yeah, aging poorly. Some heroes like it a lot better than others, and we mentioned Runeblade. Prism liked it quite a bit,
Yeah.
actually,
Yeah.
but and I guess Mech to a certain extent. We see Teklo Pounder, like decks all the time. So I guess in a way it fulfilled the heroes that only had one printing at the time in terms of their class,
Yeah.
and then the young heroes, but and then it gave us Starvo. So on Everfest probably will fulfill more stuff as we go on.
I mean, we could say, like, okay, so you could argue that it was a huge hit because we get Wildfire, Aether Wildfire for Kano, and then at the Pro Tour, that is like kind of the card of the whole uh Pro Tour, basically, So,
That
I
is
don't
a
know.
great point. That is a great point. And I forget about stuff like Aether Wildfire because it almost feels like weird. Oddly enough, it feels like we've had that card for a lot longer than Everfest, right?
Yeah,
Because like
yeah.
because it's like such a no brainer in Kano that it is. It feels like we've had it a lot longer, but that does lead us to the most recent set, Uprising. Uprising gave us two new heroes with Draconic, and we got the adult version of Icelander, which we did get from Everfest, which is worth noting. What are your
Right.
thoughts on Uprising here, as we're probably about a month into its release?
That's maybe the toughest question you're going to ask me because I haven't crystallized how I feel about the set yet.
Mhm.
So it is suffering a little bit, I think, from the lore aspect. Like all of a sudden now we're in Volcor and we're still not addressing that demons are invading our realm. So we're just not talking about that still. We kind of are a little bit. Icelander kind of knows what's going on, but they also have amnesia or something, so maybe less useful. But anyway, so that is like kind of bothering me also. Okay, I'm gonna this was what grinds my gears about the game, has since the beginning. This is a total tangent, but do you know why all of these heroes are fighting each other? Like, why is Katsu and Bravo trying to beat the crap out of each other? What is the reasoning for that? Why?
I have no clue. It's convenient for the game. Maybe. I mean, that would be my guess.
And that drives me insane. I'm like,
Mhm.
if there was, part of the lore of the game had to do with, some sort of conflict, or like told us that the history of Mysteria and Aria is, uh, that of like bad blood or something like that, then that totally makes sense. So anyway, that's my overall biggest complaint with the game is like, why are these fighting? Why can't we just be friends? Um, okay,
Friendship.
so Uprising, yeah,
Hmm.
which I value very much, friendship. Um, Okay, so Uprising. So let's talk, I guess we'll start with draft. So drafting, a little dicey, right? The actual like sitting down and getting to draft and pass the cards and stuff is I don't know, very weird.
Yes.
I don't have a better way to explain it than like it's being really weird. Like the card pool that you can open in your pod is, I don't know, it gets really dicey, and then the fact that phi can be just kind of forced, and that an average pool of phi cards can still outperform uh, other heroes at the table is like a little upsetting.
Mm-hmm.
But that comes with the caveat of that like draft is a self-correcting meta. So if too many people force phi, it allows you to like have a more powerful deck to prey on them and that sort of thing. Um, but even with that, it still feels weird. But the gameplay, once you get the drafting done, the like gameplay of Uprising is really good. And
Mm-hmm.
it's at like a really great pace. There's tons of interaction and there's tons of space for you to outplay your opponent, even with like kind of a, maybe less strong pool of cards. So I really, really appreciate that. Um, and then I am now an Icelander main, so I'm loving that, even though it's torturous. So that's that is it. Those
Yeah.
are my thoughts.
Okay. Well, I'm kind of with you on the draft. Now, I find that drafting the set is punishing.
Mm-hmm.
If you like, this is, it feels like to me, and I've drafted multiple sets at this point. This one feels like this will punish you the most if you do not read what's going on at the table. If that makes sense. Also, this set seems to really, I mean, like, you never really want yellows, but you really don't want yellows in this set. And
Yeah.
it's just the nature of draft, you're gonna get some. And
Yeah.
if you did, you know that you did not read the signals well if you're sitting there with more yellows that you have to play
Totally.
than you'd want. So it is very challenging in that way. Whether that's a good or bad thing, I'm not sure, because I enjoy a challenge personally. However, I understand where you're coming from in terms of, actually the action of drafting is a little bit iffy. But I am 100% there with you on the gameplay. The gameplay is great and it's fun, and the way all three heroes work is just really well thought out. And we got Quell, which Quell is just like such a
Well,
great
yeah.
addition to
What a
the
hit.
game. It really is. And yeah, that's where I'm at with it on limited and constructed so far. I mean, we're seeing Dromai win some stuff. I mean, obviously, Phi's quite powerful. Icelander's a slog, that's for sure. I don't know if we know exactly the right build for Icelander yet, and that's kind of cool. That one's going to be a puzzle going forward, rather than Phi's pretty figured out, and then Dromai has some kind of different ways you can build her too, which is good. I think that's always good for the game. So, it's definitely a booster set, that's for sure, and we'll know where we're at with it probably closer to Pro Tour Lille and
Yeah.
Nationals.
Yeah, I mean, so the other thing they did really well, right? So we don't have unlimited sets
Mm,
anymore, and they've made opening the only product of Uprising really, really fun,
yeah.
right? That you can get double legendary packs, and the Marvel Dragons are legitimately the coolest looking cards in the game ever. And we have like the alt art rewind and the double-sided cold foil token. There's like a lot of really cool cards to get to open. So
Hmm.
I mean, I think that is one of the best hits from this set for sure.
Yeah, it makes the us players more excited for future sets,
Yeah.
because if they keep doing stuff like this, I mean, it's going to be every set's going to be fun to open, and that might even be a way for folks like us who don't like necessarily care so much about supplemental sets that we can't
Right.
draft. We might be a little more inclined to, buy some more another Everfest if it was
Yeah.
this exciting to open, which
Yeah.
is it's a great point.
My final point also would be that compared to Monarch, Tales, and Everfest, they really nailed not having a broken hero from day one,
Mhm.
and that is a huge, huge plus.
Yeah.
Like everybody's kind of staying in their lane, no open-ended kind of abilities or too powerful or anything like that. So that is really great.
It is.
That's a huge bonus.
It really is. Now, I do want to you touched on T-Bone, your spoiler card, and
I
you
did. Yeah.
that was Attack Action's first spoiler card, and
Yep.
it was the greatest spoiler video of all time. If you haven't seen it, you guys could go check it out on YouTube. Can you take me through this visionary T-Bone video and the creative process behind it?
Yeah, the cinematic masterpiece, the Attack Action podcast cinematic universe that we've started. Um, well, okay, so my firstly, because me and you talked about this quite a bit, uh, in like our pre-chat before you were on our podcast,
Mm-hmm.
and neither of us got a spoiler for Uprising, and that's okay, right? But like, so one of my um I don't know if it's critiques or just something I feel as a content creator in this game is that for us who are kind of like mid-tier content creators, like we're not the Arsenal Pass and we're not the, I don't know, whoever else it has a bigger following than us, maybe Instant Speed or something like that, is that getting a spoiler from LSS is a huge piece of validation
Yeah.
for us, is like for content creators, you feel really, really validated that the company is listening to what you have. They appreciate what you're doing. And so they're going to hook you up um, with this uh, way to be really creative and like a really fun time in the game, right? Is to get a spoiler, and it feels really, really validating. And not getting one is totally fine, but we don't get and it must be tough because there's like a whole bunch of content creators and that's a lot of emails to throw out there. But when your buddies get invited to the party and you don't, and you find out like not from the person who's hosting the party, that's like kind of a bad feeling. But you're stoked for your buddies who get to go to the party. But all you really wanted was just like, just a 1 second phone call or text, like, hey bro, like, we just can't fit you in. We're gonna let these other people have a chance at this dope party, because they also deserve it too. But love what you're doing. See you on the next one. Like that would be totally fine, and would um, make things a little bit easier. Or knowing what the criteria is to getting a spoiler would also be nice, but then maybe like then you just have content creators trying to like only fulfill the requirements to getting a spoiler or whatever. I don't know. But so those are my thoughts about spoilers and being a content creator. Would you like to respond to that before we talk about my artistic direction on our spoiler video?
Is this on the stack? I have a chance to. I have priority.
Yeah, you may respond. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think my biggest criticism has always been communication, and yeah, it would be nice to have gotten like an email, like even if it's like a generic email, right?
Yeah.
a non-classed email to send out to all the all the content creators who didn't get one. And yeah, that's right. Like I totally agree. Yeah, everybody who gets one deserves it, and it would be nice to also get one, but sometimes you don't, and that's just what it is, right? But yeah, I think some kind of communication from LSS would be nice, right? Like, hey, we wanted to do, these made sense for us this go around, but we're still watching and listening, and I think throughout personally, I've never heard from LSS unless I've reached out to them first, you know.
Yeah.
So it would be nice to kind of hear from them, because we are part of this program, right? Content creator program. So
Right.
yeah, but that's it. And now I want to hear about your artistic vision with T-Bone.
So we were really worried, that we were going to get like a non-attack action because we're the attack action podcast, and then we'd have to spoil something that wasn't an attack. So it was really awesome to get an attack. But nobody involved in the production really plays mechanologist. So there was no like inside mechanologist stuff. So anyway, I just kind of had this idea that we should just do like a really short, story for the card that nobody else was, acting, if you can call what we did acting. Nobody was like making a basically home video for their spoiler. So I thought that would be a kind of unique way to spoil the card. And I had you know we had some costumes or whatever to like make up the video or whatever, and we also, me and Isaac live on really beautiful pieces of property, so it was like a great way to like showcase Isaac's piece of property, because he has like, go watch the video, and then come back, and then okay, great, you're back, so now you'll know everything I reference. He has this really magical oak tree that's kind of like busted through, and it's really old, has busted through this like rock outcropping, so it makes for this really dynamic kind of magical spot on his piece of property. And so I thought it would just be cool if we like did a video there. And I don't know, it just like, I collaborated with Colin, our producer, and Isaac, and we all kind of talked, and we, we're like, I don't know how to make an actual film. Do we make a storyboard? So we like drew squares and kind of like set up what we thought the camera would be looking at, and pretended we were making a real video and stuff. And there's some real stunt camera work. Like there's a part where we're straight on Isaac's face while he's driving his like his side by side, and I'm like literally holding on to the thing on the hood of it, holding his phone, and just trying not to like drop his phone or get run over or that type of shit. And I said to him, like, if this was like a real production crew, we would have like a camera strapped on an arm, and you would be a stunt double, or whatever. Instead, I'm like out here risking my life, So,
I mean,
it was a ton of fun.
it was worth it. I mean, I enjoyed the hell out of it when that came out, because, not to like put down any other creators, but I could think of very few creators that put that amount of work. I mean, like, you guys were obviously and very clearly having fun with it, which is important, but it's also like that's like a day's worth of like, running around and being silly and filming stuff, and then you have to edit it. Someone that I always appreciate their spoiler videos is Dead Summer Art, who always does a really awesome lore stuff, and I love when it's not just showing the card, and
Right.
I thought it was worth bringing up because I loved it, and I was having a ball watching it.
Yeah, and we don't have the technical prowess to do like the types of animations that maybe some other people do,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like we just don't. But what we can do is like film a home video of us pretending to be fantasy based characters, you know. And also fun anecdote about that. So I wear this cape in my character's name we lovingly called Broenthea because I have like a sword or whatever. But so that cape I have, my mom made for me when I was like 10 or something like that. And it has, for some reason, traveled with me because it's come up a few times, like that it's like a good thing to have, just like a cape.
Yeah, you never know when you're going to need a cape. I've always found that a good cape is a great thing to have, which is awesome. And shout out to your mom for making that
Yeah,
cape.
huge shout out to my mom. Yeah, it's a great cape. If it has like this cool dragon she like cut out of a fabric and like embossed it on the back and stuff. It's pretty sweet.
I love it. I love it. Now, speaking of capes, this is not a. That's a Taylor Morrow level segue from the
It
Attack Action
totally is.
podcast.
Yeah, yeah.
Let's talk about the fresh faves. Now, this is a segment I did not have at the time of you being on the episode 3 of the Fresh
Totally.
and Buds podcast, and this is where I'm going to ask you some of your favorite things in the game, and we're going to start with your favorite hero.
Okay, so historically, I have been a huge supporter of Viserai, and he's been my dude since day one. But
Okay.
then we had Icelander come along, and I was like, I never knew I wanted to be an Ice Witch, and now that's all I want to do. I don't know what it is like. Well, first off, the artwork on Icelander is so cool. That young hero, Steve Argyle drawing, which I have in the background. You guys can't see because this is an audio podcast, but I do have it hanging up behind me. Tommy can
It is
confirm
beautiful.
that.
Yep.
Thank you. Uh, so that was really appealing. And then I kind of just played with it and in Blitz, and I was like, huh, well, this is interesting. And kept toying with it, kept toying with it. And I really started to just like fall in love with the play pattern of Icelander, and it just was like so complex, and your decisions uh just matter so much more because you don't really have like I mean in Blitz you kind of do, right? You can do like the fire breathing spike them for a bunch of damage type of deal, but in CC now you just like don't have like spiky damage turns to kind of smooth over maybe your um slightly inefficient decision making. So you have to play like really tight to be able to win the game. And now with Uprising out and CC Icelander, I feel like I'm playing like Crucible Viserai, where you have like all of these slightly underwhelming or average cards, but that their power is how flexible they can be into every matchup. And that is just so fun. And the like disruption is kind of like addicting kind of
Oh yeah.
as well. Yeah.
I
So
mean,
I'm loving Icelander. I also did this weird like, well, it's not weird, but I wanted to experience what other community members like yourself do, where you're like, this is my hero. This is all I'm going to play no matter what, you know? And so my personal challenge is to get really good at playing Icelander kind of no matter what, and be one of those like kind of specialist people just to kind of get that feeling of you know what that is like, because Chain is now gone and Chain used to be my go-to. So
yeah, and I mean having that go-to is a good thing to have in your arsenal, pun intended. Um, and yeah, Icelander. I think we're gonna see some busted Icelander players, and I hope you're one of them, Taylor.
thank
Now,
you. I'm trying really hard. I'll tell you what.
well, share some lists with me because I would love to see. I won't play her, but
Cool.
I would love to see it.
I'll show
Now, now, What is your favorite weapon?
Ooh, this one is the hardest, I think, because like we were talking before the cast, there are a bunch of really cool weapons. So I have two favorites. Okay, so one for pure art, I love the art on Talishar, the Lost Prince. Is
Ooh.
so cool. I should track down that art and get a print of it because it just feels very evocative, telling a story. Like, what is this incredible sword doing here in this shop, you know? So
Mm.
I just really love that. But then my favorite weapon is Dread Scythe. Coolest weapon in the game.
Oh yeah.
It Nobody uses it. It has like a weird hit effect, but it's also a scythe. I don't know. It's freaking sweet. I'm ready for the attack action that you can play on scythes and claws. That's generic.
Claws and sides, man.
Yeah, totally.
That would be. I mean, Dread Scythe. God, I love that weapon so much. It will have its day one day when you
I
know
hope so.
you want to play
I
a lot of
tried.
blues in Runeblade, and I think that's what
Yeah.
it'll do. Uh,
I tried it in chain. I like because it has the arcane hit effect, right?
mhm.
So I was like, well, you just give this go again, pitch a blue. Now your meet and greets, your rip through realities, all turned on because nobody's gonna block this like one arcane, you know. But the cost curve on that is too expensive.
Yeah, especially for chain. Now, what is your favorite equipment?
I also have two for this one as well. So I don't know if that's breaking the rules of fresh faves or not, but
Let me call the judge. No, he's not here. It doesn't matter.
so Alluvian Constellus is just my new favorite piece of equipment because it's so freaking powerful. It makes your like arcane matchups like so much easier. Like against Viserai, with the pajamas as people are calling it, it just makes it like you get so much value out of Waning Moon. You know, it does like 15 damage a turn for basically blocking their damage, which is or not a turn, a game. So that's really great. Super cool artwork. Looks great in cold foil. Got to have the cold foils when you're playing an ice hero. My second favorite piece of equipment is Rampart because I have it in a mini snap. And so it's really dope to just slap that down on the combat chain and like block some damage and just like, you know, that I really like Rampart. And the full art on it is just freaking sweet.
Those are both great answers. Rampart is, I mean, for lack of, I mean, if you don't count the whatever the common was, it was our first shield, which is really cool,
Yeah.
and it's super powerful. And I know Stalagmite's awesome. I do like Stalagmite quite a bit, but Rampart, the fact that you get to do it the whole game,
Yeah.
is way cooler.
Yeah.
And also it like punishes dash, which is like really great.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
break that combat chain.
Totally.
Um,
Yeah.
Now, what is your favorite non-hero, non-weapon, non-equipment card? Your run-of-the-mill cards, attack actions, regular actions, and instants.
I could not pick one for this either. So I have two. So first is Tome of the Arknight. In no other parts of the game do you feel like a friggin' god when you play Tome of the Arknight. You hit a non-attack and an attack, and you just add them to your hand, and you just say, "Let's go!" You know. I in skirmish season 2, I was running what I was calling Librarian Viserai. So I was just running tomes, so Tome of the Arknight, Gorgonian Tome, Tome of Findal, Sutcliffe's Notes. So I would have turns where I just kind of only did paperwork or reading and just kind of make rune chants and kind of fiddle about. And that was really fun. And anytime you hit off of Tome of the Arknight, you just feel awesome. Then my second favorite card is Invert Existence. Like when that came
Ooh.
out, I was like, this card has dope art and is the Rune Blade, Shadow Rune Blade, Reckless Swing, and I can't wait to win games based on this card. And it like interacts with your opponent's graveyard, which hadn't happened before, and I had a really spicy game in the Vegas Calling #1 where my opponent, I was playing against Bravo, and he was like a couple minutes late to our match. I forget how many minutes. I think there was like casual rules enforcement, so he could be like a buttload of minutes late, like 10 minutes late or something. And
wow.
like when they only give you 50 minutes. And then I was like, if he's going to fatigue me, we might not freaking get there. But then he went like straight aggro, and it was a really dicey match. But I pitch stacked Invert Existence and knew it was coming up, and he like wound up not having any cards in his hand on his turn because he had to like block out thinking he was fatiguing me, and I just drew into Invert and killed him, and he was like pretty flabbergasted by that, and it was so sick.
I love
I'll never forget that
flabbergasting
game.
people. That is the best. That is the best.
You should get t-shirts that say that now.
Yeah, I'll add it to the notes. All right, so that was the fresh faves. Thank you for participating. Next, we do have
No
some
problem.
listener questions, Taylor.
Oh
The-
my goodness.
The first comes from Capolo, aka Andrea Biaggi, who has two kinds of questions. You know, we kind of answered part of the first one. You played and casted at the Battle Hardened LA.
Yeah.
Which one did you like best?
Gosh, it's hard to choose, right? Like, I think if you had asked me like on Sunday after I had played, I would have said like casting was more fun. But because I played like ass on Sunday, I was so tired, and I got a bunch of shitty matchups as Icelander because I'm an Icelander main now, so that's all I play.
Mm-hmm.
And so I did not do good, and people were just taking my elo, and I got no XP. And one of my 2 wins was a bye because I was a fool and played all 6 rounds, and people just dropped, and etc. But the amount I learned from losing all of those games made it so I performed way better last weekend at my Road to Nats and feel way better about the deck and feel like I'm actually like getting somewhere. So I would say that I like them both equally. I don't think I liked more one than the other. I don't know if I would sacrifice a ton of my playing at events to cast them. But we'll see what the future holds. Both are extremely fun, and I would obviously do casting again and continue to play, obviously.
Great answer. And
Thank
Cap
you.
also asked, do you think there's a sleeper hero that will break out at Pro Tour Lille?
I do. I don't know if there are any. I don't know. So I think Lexi is really well positioned depending on what the other couple of decks wind up being that are at the top. Like Lexi, I think, is going to do really well into Fi, and I'm surprised nobody's playing her. Probably because there's too much Prism running around, and that's like a terrible matchup. And it does really well into Viserai as well, and Briar. So those are like 3 decks that you could see that Lexi could then again have like another great moment. But you have to gym your way into that, right? You have to like dodge Old Him, you have to dodge Bravo, you got to dodge Prism, and then like get to your good matchups. So that could be pretty tough. I do think that if the meta gets narrow enough, Icelander, you see, now you're all are going to be like, well, you have such bias because you're an Icelander main. But I truly believe if it gets narrow enough and you can kind of shore up, and it's not with illusionists, like if Prism and Dromai are around, like play a different hero, don't play Icelander. But if we have like 5 Viserai, Old Him, and Bravo, as kind of the top decks, then I think Icelander does really well. Like your easiest matchup is kind of Guardian, because you can just like Frost Hex combo them off the face of the earth, which is really great. And here's the spicy tech for your Viserai matchup is Pyroglyphic Protection Blue. Yep, that's an Everfest card. Yeah, you don't even know what it does, do you? Yeah.
No, I don't.
Okay, so it costs 2, and it says anytime you would be dealt arcane from a source, prevent one of it in the blue. So
Oh,
when they go Mordred Tide, Mauve Skies, Red Shrill, you block for 2, take 1, they make a bunch of rune chants. You block some rune chants earlier, and then they play Revel and they have like 16 rune chants. You just boom, play Pyroglyphic Protection, and you just block 16 damage for 2 resources, and it's freaking sweet.
that is very cool. Uh,
Totally.
so Icelander is gonna be winning Pro Tour Loyal. You heard it here first, folks. Next, we have a question from Super Legend, who asks, or this not really. This part's not a question. I'm just gonna read the whole thing. Why not? I remember you talking on your pod about needing video content to get into the content creator bubble with Fab. Why do you think there's a need to get podcasts on YouTube? Personally, I watch very little video content. I'd rather read/listen. I guess it's because I listen to podcasts on my iPod. I am with you here, Super Legend. I'm very much an audio person. I enjoy the on the go of podcasts. But to answer the question, Taylor, why do you think there's a need to get podcasts on YouTube?
Well, so it makes your podcast more broadly appealing,
Mm-hmm.
right? So that people who potentially like maybe do most of um their time to listen to stuff or something could be on the computer, right? Not driving in a car or on their phone or something like that. And so it's pretty easy to just like Control T, open up YouTube, start a podcast, and just kind of leave it over there. Um, People also like to see your face for whatever reason. And, that's helpful. I would say also you can have the like added benefit of like clipping your video podcasts into like clickbaity stuff, right? So shout out to Old Man in the Three, JJ Redick's basketball podcast. Um, his co-host is also named Tommy, which
Oh,
is cool. Yeah.
very
He
nice.
also might be an East Coast guy. Well, they're both East Coast guys, but so they record their podcast, video it, and then they clip stuff out of it and release that during the month. So that is also like kind of nice if you can't catch the whole episode. But I think shout out to Super Legend, also a Patreon supporter of the Attack Action Podcast. Thank you very much. Also shout out to the oh crap. Now I can't remember what I'm trying to say. What is the Finn and Jake Adventure Time? Shout out to Adventure Time. We bonded over that great cartoon. What am I saying now? I don't even know. I'm saying that I think when I talked about that on our podcast, potentially with you or somebody else,
I think
uh,
we might have talked about it together.
yeah, that doing videos is just another way to like reach other people. So not necessarily filming the podcast and doing a video podcast, but doing like, deck techs, gameplays, sillier stuff like uh, Colin's favorite dragons or something like that, I think are also great ways to get people to like notice your podcast.
Yeah, cosign over here. Pobo Mike or Pop Mike, I forget. Is it Pop Mike or Pobo? He does all the great cocktails. How
Yeah, Mike
important?
Popovich.
Yeah, Mike Popovich. How important is a race face in the current meta? What decks do you think utilize it best? I have some thoughts on this. If
Okay, good.
yeah, well, first I'll start. I think
Sure.
it is good in Brute because it's a 6. Outside of that, I think it's pretty narrow in terms of its uses. It's not bad, but I do not think it is important. I don't think it is. This is not the new CNC whatsoever. It's not even really a sleep dart in a way. It can be against certain decks, but uh, it's not devastating for a lot of decks. That's where I'm at
Yeah.
with it.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, like, so with any of your elemental heroes, it turns off any of your fusing you may want to do or any of your channels. So it can be an important tempo hit against those heroes. But me and Isaac were just talking about this, that it's kind of brutal that it blocks for 2.
Yeah,
You
that
know,
extra
you can
point of damage is huge.
yeah. Yeah, so you can see now why like CNC is so good because it blocks for 3. I mean, obviously we knew that, but I've definitely cooled off of Erase Face compared to when it first was spoiled. I was like, "Oh, great. This is totally a great card. It's going to be a staple." But it doesn't affect 5 very much. In some heroes, like it would be fine for them to like not pay attention to the things about their hero it doesn't hit and still be able to have like a game plan going forward. It's pretty good into Viscerai, I would say,
Yeah.
for sure.
And
Turns off the
Lexi.
rune chant generation. Yeah, I mean, yeah, because they fuse and that sort of thing, and then card they reveal can't have that trait. So it definitely is like really applicable, but its hardest part, this is the summation of all of these points we've made, is that it's a mid-rangey card and it's not a mid-rangey meta. And so if it was more mid-rangey, it would be more important.
Yeah. And that being said, it will most likely get better as time
Yeah.
goes on, as we get more talented heroes that care about the talents. The next, speaking of a talented hero, Mr. Patrick Shaw from the Combat Chain podcast asks, do you buy into the breakout panic of the combo / a zoomer fi we're seeing? And what's your takes on the seeming pattern of dominating big, bad, aggressive deck becoming the most played deck in the format with the player base calling for bans? And he puts in parentheses here, stubbies.
Cool. This is great. This is a great question, and I could talk about this forever. I was just talking on our Discord, the Attack Action Podcast Discord, trying to see what thoughts the people in there had, and they were all very cool and level-headed about everything, which I appreciated. I think Fi is a powerful hero, but isn't oppressive. Like I don't think that deck is like pushing anybody out of the way and making it so we can't play other heroes really currently. I think that there needs to be no bans at this point in the game, and all of the things Fi is doing are things that we have tools for, whether that be cards or heroes, to counter what is happening with that deck to make those decks shift. So I think it's totally fine. Now, this is like a thing about card games that you have to like get used to, and it's like super annoying, is that whenever anything gets good, people want it to be banned right away. And people will tell you the different thing that needs to be banned. They're going to say like Stubbies needs to be banned, Belittle Minnowism needs to be banned, Draconic as a concept needs to be banned. I don't know, you know. People will just say that all of the time, you know. I think the biggest one kind of was Briar, that I was on the camp of, I think this deck can be targeted. And then, you know, Isaac did that at Nationals. And, you know, he top aided as Ice Lexi at Nationals. And we had played 2 games as testing before he left. And then he just made sure that his deck was like super targeting Briars and did a great job. In another alternate reality, he's the national champ. You know what I mean? And me and him are now rich, living off of his national champ fame. You know, That reality exists. So, and and then we see kind of how the uh the later national champs in that season, um with New Zealand and Australia, we see that Breyer is being targeted and is getting pushed out of winning those events. Now, I'm not going to say I don't think Starvo was the same way, and I don't really think Chain was the same as well, but you know,
Yeah.
those are kind of my thoughts. Is that like, people are gonna want stuff to be banned, so it's
Yeah.
whatever.
I mean, I'm in the same camp as you. I mean, it is everything's knee jerk, right? In card games, and yeah, I do not think the calls for bans are really hold much water. We'll see after the Pro Tour, because I think that's
Yeah.
possible that we see a developed meta, and if we get to the Pro Tour and it's just like crazy amount of fives and Stubbies is doing its thing, who knows? But yeah, I'm thinking we're fine. And to kind of piggyback into Greg, aka Darth Prentice's question, says, "Call your
Hell yeah.
shot. Will belittle slash minnowism get banned before the final expansion set release this year? And additionally, how long have you had the push broom stash, and how long does it take to groom it every day?"
Those are a lot of questions there that have in-depth answers. I don't think belittle minnowism is going to get banned. If it were to get banned, old him would be running it. You know what I mean? It would be so good that old him would also run it, but it's like not so good that every hero needs to run it. And although it like is a pretty good little card combo and is maybe on like the slightly broken side of things, like maybe closer to that, it still feels rather fair in terms of like it still costs you a resource. It still only attacks for 3, which you can block. It does set up other parts of your turn, but I don't think it is broken on the level that other cards in the game have been broken, right? Like, I mean, maybe the internet will flame me for saying this, but there isn't like, like Plunder Run is really powerful. Could you imagine Fi with Plunder Run also right now? That would just be like insane.
It would be terrible. I mean,
Yeah.
terrible in terms of the experience for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's not like open-ended like that is. You know what I mean? Like any attack can draw you that card. You have to kind of have this specific lane in which your deck operates to be able to use it. And so because of that, I don't think it needs to be banned. But I do agree that it is a very good card combo.
Cool. I agree. I think we probably will not see that. I mean, go away unless it does get to the point that you mentioned, like where almost every deck is doing it.
Yeah. Have you ever tried it in Levia?
No, and I don't think I will be. I mean, that's such a that makes the deck actively worse. I think that's a
You
lot
think
of
so? You don't want to go belittle Dread
reveal.
Screamer, Graveling Growl. You like don't want to do that?
I mean, I'm sure I'll try it at some point, but I'll hate it because I'll be like, this is too easy, this card combo's too good, But and to touch on Greg's second question, tell us a little bit about your mustache.
Right. Okay. So my
The important
mustache.
question.
Yeah, the most important part. So my joke is when people kind of ask me about it or like have been like, oh, I can't really grow one. I'm like, okay, this is what I did every night before bed. You massage your upper lip for 10 minutes before you go to sleep, and that stimulates your hair follicles. But that's not what I do. No, I do embarrassingly but maybe cool. Also, it also is maybe cool. Have like a tiny mustache comb that I comb my mustache with, and I probably comb it once a day, every day, and that's about it. And I think I've had my mustache for a decade now, maybe a
Wow.
little bit longer. So yeah, I can't really grow a beard, and I tried like a gross, like in college, like kind of like a swashbuckler goatee sort of thing.
Interesting.
Uh, and I did not like that. And then I had the handlebar mustache where it was really long and I waxed it and it curled and stuff. And that was pretty dope for a while. But it becomes like a little bit too much upkeep. So now we just keep it to the nice tidy
Well,
mustache I have now.
I'm calling it now. The first fabled weapon is going to be Taylor's mustache comb. It might be one-handed. It might be offhand. Actually,
Yeah, it's
you can,
definitely offhand. It's small enough.
yeah, you can do a Centauri saver and a comb,
Hell yeah.
or even a mandible claw, which would be pretty cool as well. Now, I have some special segments here, but I do want to touch on, like, we both qualified for Nats, which is very exciting.
It is.
I qualified in CC,
Yeah.
which was super exciting. I played Levia at the very first store I played my first event at last year, which was also an RTN, which I did very poorly at, but it was my first event, understandable. And then flash forward a year, I am qualifying for Nats. I'm over the moon. This is very exciting, and to do it with Levia was just the
Yeah.
icing on the cake, and I'm
Did
so excited.
so my question to you about your first one, did you play Levia at your first RTN also?
I did not. I did play Chain. I played Chain because it
Nice.
was the cards I had the most of at the time. I didn't even have a Carrion Husk. I didn't have any kind of the power. I don't think. I think at the time they were playing Enlightened Strike and CNC. I didn't even have those yet. I just had this deck, and I was like, oh, I'm just gonna jam like extra blood deck cards to try to like make it work. And I did okay, but I scrubbed out. But it was a learning experience. I'm glad to have played the better Shadow hero this time around, and play with the best equipment in the game, and yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Awesome. So how many rounds and then what did you play in your RTN? Like I
So
know you played Levia, but who'd you play against? What heroes?
so actually earlier I was on instant speed and I was asked the same question, and I think I remember I forgot a few of the rounds, but it was a 5 round but 19 player uh RTN, so not huge. And
Mm.
um first round was I played against Briar. I love that matchup. Any
Totally
excuse to
smoked him.
block is
Yeah.
is great for Levia. And then round two, I played against Prism. Now my poor Prism opponent was so very salty, and he admittedly like not apologized, but was like, I know I'm very salty, but I did roll scab skins 5 times that game, and it was 5, 5, 4, and 6.
Let's
Or
go,
and then
bro.
maybe one
Let's
more.
go.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I was like, I was making so many action points, dude. It was out of
Hell
control.
yeah.
I still
Hell
have some left over. Um, and I gave Prism the old what for. Though I guess looking at how many living legend points she has right now, I feel a little bit bad. Maybe
Oh
giving her a
man.
chance to win, but uh, and then round three is when I picked up my first loss, and that was to Dorinthia. And
Oof. Yeah,
yeah,
that's tough.
it was a tough match. It was the first time I'd played Dorinthia with the new
Yeah, it's
stuff that
bullshit.
she got. Yeah, yeah, the new bullshit. Yeah, and it was a close match, but it just I
You
was at
run
a
the
point.
Husk in that matchup too, I guess.
I
Right?
run the Husk in every matchup except Wizard.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah, yeah. It's I just want to use the Husk, I guess. But and then round four, I beat Icelander against a buddy of mine, and at that point, I was locked. So round 5, I did lose to Dash, and it was
Echo Pounder.
Teclo Pounder Dash. Now the interesting thing is, like, we were chatting after. He's like, "You didn't see a single Blood Rush Bellow, did you?" I'm like, "Yeah, I didn't." Which is like, it's kind of tough
Right.
to push through the Teclo Pounder matchup if you don't see that. And yeah, so at that point I was locked in for top 8. Got into top 8. Round 1 was Phi. I really liked that matchup.
What do
And
you like about that matchup?
I think you if you know how to block it, it feel like I like having Carrying Husks in that matchup because they're if you could survive their Stubby's turn, I think you win, right? And you just save, so you save all your equipment blocks for that turn. It's like to me I treat it like OG Bravo Crippling Crush, right? Because like you lose to that Crippling Crush if you cannot block it efficiently, and that's why you have the Carrion Husk. And it felt he did the Stubbies thing, and I took maybe 10 damage that turn, and
Whoa.
I was able to turn around and just once they're blocking, they lose, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
it's that being said, I recognize that it can't always go that way. I think Phi has some explosive, like like turns that like force you to use your equipment early before they use their stubbies. But I still like the matchup. I don't know why, because I think you can still just block correctly, and it always feels good to block
Yeah.
in Levi early game, and that's just where I'm at on it. And so I won that one, which was awesome. And then
Hell yeah.
quarters or no semis, I played the
Yep.
dash that I lost to, the Teclo Pounder dash. Saw my Blood Rush Bellows that time and won, and with a reckless swing, which is always
Oh God.
yeah.
You dirty boy,
I
yo.
know. It's the old
You're
flabbergasting.
in the finals?
Yeah, I make it to the finals, and
I didn't know you made it to the
I
finals.
made it to the finals, my
Oh
friend.
my God. It's
And
amazing.
I get paired up against a bud named Nick, from my LGS, who was on Lexi, and I don't really like that matchup to begin with. If you can somehow get the tempo, sure. Then like once they're blocking, it doesn't feel good for them. But it was a pretty close game. I rolled double ones on Scab Skins,
Ugh.
and we were having a good time. It was my friend. We were both qualified, and yeah,
Yeah.
it felt pretty good. It would have been nice to have given Levi some LL points and get into that article whenever
Yeah.
she hits LL. But that's pretty much
You
it. But
mean in 20 years?
yeah, well, hey, come on, let's relax. We're gonna get some support for her eventually. I'm telling you, they're gonna give her a soul shackle, and then it's like that's over, and then all of a sudden your hexagores are gonna be so good. But yeah, that was
Jeez,
that was my
insane.
run. I ate one kind bar the whole day. My head hurt like crazy by the last round, and
Yeah.
but I was happy, and yeah. But what about you, my friend?
Well, okay, I have two questions before you get to
Oh
me.
yeah,
I know
sure.
you want to talk to me about stuff, but uh first question is to the community. I always get a headache whenever I play in any event, and I drink like a buttload of water. I bring nutrition. I try to sleep well, and I think it's just like concentrating so hard, or it's just so much input. Like I don't know how to like get past it. At this point, it's part of the game. So if anybody has any advice, please let me know. And then what I wanted to ask you about your Levia deck is, so like into Phi, are you just like, are you kind of like blocking out and making good exchanges? Like if you have Dread Screamer into Gravel and Growl, you kind of like take a bit more to like whack them for 13, and then your damage just like kind of becomes really sticky because they have a lot of block for twos, so a ton less like gets over if they do block. Is that kind of how that matchup goes, or
Yeah,
how's it go?
it definitely goes that way. I think that the block for twos is a huge factor in the matchup, right? Because Levi is very good at kind of presenting that like 10 to 13 damage, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And Um, and when you have like a bunch of block for twos, like that like guaranteed 12 block is not always there. So if you can get them to that point, I feel like
Yeah.
you're favored. But early game, I play it. At least this is my theory, right? You play it as like just make sure they don't hit mask, right?
Right. Yeah.
Whatever you can take damage because they're not blocking anyway, and you can output plenty of damage, and they're not blocking till they have to. So yeah, you kind of make sure you don't um like give them mass triggers early, and then their combo turn, at least in the combo version of the deck, I think it's important. You know, you kind of want to get something in your arsenal relatively early so that so you could at least block with 3 cards from hand and then have something to turn off Blood Debt in your arsenal, pitch, you know, do your thing, whatever, just swing back at them for 6. And and be conservative with your equipment because it's important. Now I played Crown and Arcanite Skullcap in the deck. I think Skullcap's correct in this matchup because I think blocking twice is so much more important. Crown's great. I think Crown's awesome. It's a great addition to the deck. But I think people are kind of like in autopilot mode with Crown. Like there's like, oh, you just play Crown. It's like better. I think right now, Arcanite Skullcap blocking twice and for 3 essentially is very important. So that's just how I approach the matchup. Like treat it like it's Katsu for most of the game, except for that go off turn.
Cool. That's cool. And then, so what's the one? What's your one like spicy, or what's the spice tech in your deck? I had to look at your deck list, so I have some thoughts. But what, in your opinion, is your little bit of Tommy freshness on the top there?
It's just the one blue Blood Tribune in the deck.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. That's totally it.
Which is like, in reality, should be like a gem. Like it should be like I have Ophidia to kind of help out your discard stuff, but I don't have an Eye of Ophidia, and I actually think Blood Tribute is pretty like not the worst because it's like a 1-card hand that can turn off Blood Debt. It's just like it's a blue that you pitch, and then if you have to play it, you play it. But
cool.
that is the spice.
Nice. Yeah, I think you run 3 blue convulsions of bellows from Hell Bellows, right? You run 3 blues of those too.
Convulsions from the Bellows of Hell, which side note is the worst card to write in a deck list ever.
Totally.
And so I'm considering cutting it just because of that. Never have to write it again in those tiny boxes. But
totally.
What's your question about those cards?
Oh, nothing. Just my comment. It's more of a comment that like I think that's a slept on card in Leviathan, especially in blue for the late game dominate win. Like Isaac was doing that real early in the Monarch meta on Leviathan and would win games because people don't know what's happening. And I will tell you that playing against Leviathan against a person who knows what the fuck they're doing. Excuse me, I don't know if I can cuss on your podcast.
You can. Yeah, it's whatever. Check off the not made for kids on the YouTube.
Gotcha. It's really scary. You know, like you play you roll Scab Skin, or you play Blood Rush, roll Scab Skins. Now you have 2 extra action points, and then all of a sudden you do like 28 damage, and you're like, oh my god.
Yeah.
You know, not knowing that is possible is very scary.
That and like a lot of players really don't know what these Shadow Brute cards are, and they don't know what they're supposed to block. I think a lot of times they'll overblock on stuff, and then all of a sudden they're making I think there's also a common misconception. This is a little tangent. That I think that people think that fatiguing Leviathan is a viable option. And it is not, because there is so much juice in that deck. It's like you're gonna just have a bad time because I'm just keep on like double hitting you with 6s and 7s. So
totally, and you can recur Deep Rooted Evil, so it's not like you run out of cards that are really powerful. Yeah, totally. And that's Levi's dream, is to just try to get fatigued. It's like, sure, I'll set up freaking Dread Screamer, Deep Rooted Evil, like can you deal with 18 damage? I don't think so.
No,
You know?
no. And ever since Swing Big came out, I mean, just like
Oh God,
early,
yeah.
yeah, it's like such a good early play. It's great right after a Dread Screamer because maybe they blocked with a card already, and then there's like, oh,
Yeah.
well, I don't get the Quicken. Um,
No, you're taking 4 to the face.
it is
Yeah.
funny. The Icelander opponent I had did get the Quicken. They couldn't use it, but you know, it's what it is. Now, tell me about your road to nationals, please. It was
Okay,
a
great.
draft, correct?
Yeah, it was draft. So, um, my kind of, I don't know if it was my early in the year on the podcast, like probably our New Year's resolution, right, was one of the things I wanted to do was qualify again for nationals. So last summer I had a really great run where I like went undefeated in a tournament, and then I qualified again and probably could have gone undefeated, but I kind of punted my semi-final game and like really messed up there. But in that game haunts me forever because then I would be playing against a person I had like beat with what I felt was relative ease in Swiss, be playing them again, and I don't know if they could have changed anything. So I would have 9-0'd two of them. But so I wanted to prove to myself that I could do it again. And this was before the chain ban the first time. So it was like in the back of your mind, you kind of have like, well, I was playing a broken hero. No wonder I did so good. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Which I think is false. I think I am like a pretty competent player. But so I
I
wanted
would say
to
so.
thank you, sir. Thank you. I wanted to prove to myself that I could qualify for nationals again. But then as the year like went on, it was like, ooh, I have this wedding. Like road to national season is like at the wrong time in the summer for me to be able to do it. And so I'm missing out on a whole 2 weeks. So my I'm only going to get 3 events in, and that feels rather dicey to be able to qualify, you know? Because for, I think a lot of people, your RTNs are like basically your local meta, kind of. And for me and Isaac, like, we just have to kind of really look through the potion of seeing and kind of opt 2 or 3 or however many ops potion of seeing does to try to figure out what the meta is going to be for us to be able to like perform well. So that's like pretty challenging. So the level playing field of draft was my best opportunity. And I was so excited to play draft because I knew it was like a level playing field and I feel really confident drafting. Um, and I did pretty good. I went X and 2 and I 2-1'd the 2 pods I was in. My first pod, I drafted Phi, and there's this weird thing in Monarch. I mean, not Monarch, Uprising. Like my first pack I opened is just chocked full of sweet Icelander cards, like uh, Aether, Ice Vein blue, Aether Hail blue, more blue ice cards, and there's like one like I forget what it is. It's just one of the like kind of red staple go again cards for Fi. There's like one of those. So I picked that pack one, pick one, because I'm like, I'm gonna send great signals that Icelander is open, and the first 3 people downstream to me that I'm passing to will pick Icelander because it looks like it's really, really open, hopefully. And then I will kind of be in this nice like Phi seat right here. But the dude to my left just forced Phi also. And so
Ugh.
pack 2 got kind of rough. So I think I was in a really good position through pack 1 to get a deck that was going to 3-0 the pod, but then I kind of got like kind of housed in pack 2. So I just only went 2-1, which was fine. Then in my second pod, this is my most proud moment in draft, is I was in a really weird seat where I couldn't go Phi or Icelander based on like kind of the card pool and what was being passed, like the signals. And the only thing that was kind of open was Dromai, but it was like dragonless Dromai.
Mm.
So people kept like passing me the different Cinepies and Sixers, like poppers. So I just hoovered up every popper and Cinepie I could, and then I just had this kind of like mid-range beatdown deck that, because I knew there were no dragons, but Dromai cards happening, I was like, well, I'm pretty sure there's at least two other Dromais, and if I get paired against them after round one, if the one across from me or like, diagonal to me isn't Dromai, then I have like a really good chance of winning the mirror because I have four poppers. And I think these must be like, some of the only ones at the table. And so round one, I played Dromai and just stomped them with my Cinepie popper deck. And it was like 18-0. Like I only lost 2 health.
Wow.
And didn't like play a single dragon. Yeah, it was awesome. Then I got paired into Isaac, which sucked. And he was on like a pretty good Fi deck. And team kill there, he wins that one. But it was like pretty close. Like I just like kind of tried to block as much as possible and then had like, Cinepie for 8. And he's like, now you're at 12, And my deck was kind of built around like I had 3 red trade-ins, so you can arsenal that, play that for free, go again into like a Cinepie or a 6 power thing. So you could kind of do this like mid-range thing really well. So he beat me, and then I played, shout out to Carlos, homie Carlos. He was the other Dromai at the table. And it was like the same thing, like just popping his dragons, hitting him with giant Cinepies, and just winning the mirror there. And then I bubbled in for top 8 at the 8th spot, and this was like probably the worst. The top 8 draft was like the worst packs ever.
Oh, really?
Like just straight ever. Everybody at the table complained about how awful it was. Like in pack 1, there was like nothing for none of the players. Like there was like a heat wave, which I picked pack 1, but there was like no red go again cards. There are no blue ice cards. There are no dragons or anything like that. And so it was like, okay, well, this pack sucks. And then the next pack comes, and it's kind of the same thing for all of pack 1. And so I was just like all over the place, and I'm so stressed out. I'm like, oh my God, I've made it this far. Everything is falling apart. And I think I made a mistake by kind of sending signals to the person I was passing to that Dromai was open, and passed them like a Kyloria. I forget what I picked instead. Something stupid, I think. Well, not something stupid, but then later it would become stupid. And then my seat wound up also being a Dromai seat because I actually sat next to Isaac, and he was picking Icelander, and Fi was just like not there because of the quality of cards were super low. So I just like panicked and picked Dromai again, and kind of had like a pretty bad Dromai deck. But I got paired, and it kind of worked out because I like cut the guy I was passing to off of Dromai, like sent him strong Dromai signals and then cut him off from it. So his deck, I think, suffered from that. But I wound up playing Icelander against my buddy Brooks. And like my joke with Brooks is like we always sit next to each other at all of the tournaments we've ever been in, but we never play each other. So we actually played each other. And I just fatigued him out as he was on Iceland.
Oh, wow.
And I just like, played really conservative. There was no time frame, and he had like 3 cards left in hand at the end of the game, and I wound up like beating him. And that kind of goes back to my points about how like the gameplay in Uprising is really good, because I definitely just kind of tried to be the better player than Brooks rather than like relying on my deck to be better than his. And unfortunately, it was a homie I knocked out of, Road to Nats qualifying. But I was so stoked afterwards. I was just like, smile on my face, arms in the air, like, yes, I did it. And it didn't even matter. And then I lost the mirror in semis. He had just like he got all the copies. He was the third Dromai at the table, and he
Oh,
got
wow.
all of the copies of Rakes, and so he just kind of overwhelmed me with his board state, and I couldn't kind of play on. So, but it was really close to being Isaac and me finals. Like things kind of
Oh,
shake up a little bit. He's one of the 4 who made it in that exact same tournament, and he lost to uh, our friend Sam, who had a really good 5 deck. He wound up getting the right cards for his deck, but he also lost to that Dromai player. So it was exciting.
that is unbelievably exciting. It sounds like a lot of friends along the way that you had to destroy. Um,
Yeah.
Shout out Carlos Brooks and whoever else. And both you and Isaac qualified on the same pod.
Same
right?
day, same tournament. Yeah,
It's
incredible.
fate. It's fate. Now, will you guys be attending nationals?
It's really hard to want to. I mean, we really want to, but
Mhm.
it's like plane tickets are like $800 from where we live,
Yeah.
and Worlds is in San Jose, which is like a 6-hour drive. So that's like a little bit easier to do, even though I'm like not qualified for Worlds. But in terms of like getting to go to a big tournament and stuff, it's also like right at the start of school.
Mm-hmm.
Nationals is, and I'm a teacher, so that's like pretty hard to try to get that beginning of school time off. So I don't know yet. It's kind of the needle's moving towards no, unfortunately.
Well, I hope the needle leans the other way, but it's understandable. It is quite the trip. So,
Totally.
well, I am happy for all the Battle Bros right now qualified for nationals. Very exciting. Whether we all get to play or not, it is an
Totally.
achievement, and I'm glad you got your New Year's resolution. And
Thank you.
that is it. Now I do.
Yeah.
We have a special segment right now. So for anyone who didn't
Great.
listen to the episode of Attack Action Podcast that I was on, Taylor gave me the old razzle dazzle and surprised me with a surprise quiz, which I
believe
did.
you called it ambush journalism.
It was ambush journalism. It was 100% ambush journalism, and the pendulum has swung back the other way, my friend.
Yeah, excellent.
And I do have a short quiz for you.
Okay.
Now, as much as it pained me to do it, I listened back to Fresh
I
and Buds
knew it.
episode 3.
I knew it. I knew it.
And I just have some questions based on the Crack-A-Pack from that episode. I don't do a lot of Crack-A-Packs anymore because there's a lot to talk about these days. And
Oh my God. I knew I should have listened to the episode. Because in the show notes it says special segment, and I was like, what is he gonna, is it gonna be on our first episode? And I was like, man, I should listen back to it just to know. And then
it's
all
very
right,
hard
anyway.
to do it. I did not, just so you know, this brought me no joy. But it is bringing me joy now. First question is 3 questions. Which
Okay.
set pack did we open in the Crack-A-Pack?
Arcane Rising.
Correct. Great.
Yes.
Great. Now, next question
Oh God.
is
Okay.
a 2-parter.
Okay. All
I'm
right.
going to read you a quote, and it is quoting you. And then I'm going to ask you, which card were you talking about? Here
Okay.
is the sentence. You would have to be on on quite a momentum shift to really make that threatening.
And I have to tell you what card that is?
Yeah, I will give you a hint. It was generic, and it was an
Okay.
attack.
Quite on momentum to make that card threatening. I'm going to say it is rifting.
You are correct. What color
Oh
was
my
it?
God, I'm crushing it. Let's go, baby. Let's
What
go.
color was it?
Color?
Yeah.
Ooh.
For bonus
This is
points.
a tough one. Yeah, I'm going to say blue.
Correct. Wow.
Okay. Cool. Yeah.
And I feel like
Whooshing it from downtown.
this one, the third question might be a little easy. I'm not sure. I'm gonna read you a. It was one of the like non-common cards. I'm gonna read you the flavor text. It was a quote from someone.
Oh God. Okay.
Finally, time to take out the trash.
That's a flavor text on a card?
Yeah, and it's a quote by a character. The character that could play the card.
Ugh. Well, it really feels like a snarky Azalea comment. So do you want to know the hero or what card it is?
What card?
What card? Oh my God. But it also Dash has a little bit of that flavorness. It's definitely not Viscerai. So Viscerai is not in there for sure. Kano's crap is like Aether this, Aether that. Dash does have some funny stuff. But I'm gonna say it's an Azalea card. Ooh, this is really hard. Take out the trash?
To be
Maybe
honest,
it is a Dash thing.
It did not really make a lot of sense with what the card is. I don't know.
I'm gonna say it is. No, we're going back to Dash. And let's say I don't even know what Dash cards are. Convection Amplifier, is that a card?
That is a card.
That's my pick.
It is
I don't
incorrect.
think that's it.
You were on the right
Yeah.
track with Azalea. It is three of a kind. And,
Oh my God! Really?
And funny
That's what that
enough,
flavor text is.
I know it
Jesus.
doesn't really make a lot of sense. Funny enough, because I had known that Isaac was a big Azalea player, I was like, oh, does Isaac play three of a kind in his Azalea deck? And you're like, no, it's not really good enough. And then flash forward to Nationals,
gosh.
Isaac
Yeah.
whiffs on a three of a kind. I was like,
Yeah,
what
totally.
the heck?
That's crazy.
Yeah, so you get a whopping 2 out of 3 correct. With the bonus points, will bring you to I don't know, C plus.
That was great. What a great quiz.
Yeah.
I had so much fun.
I'm glad you did. You did great. Now,
Thank
I
you.
also wanted to. So you're a basketball fan. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. Are you a Golden State fan? Or
Well, yes.
yes.
I'm like, so fan. I'm not a fan, really, of
Okay.
stuff.
Okay.
Well, of like sports stuff, right? Like
Mhm.
in the level of fandom that America goes to, you would consider me not a fan.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
But you,
Right?
I guess the better question, you follow them, like follow
Yeah.
what they're doing. You like watching them.
I do.
Okay.
Yeah. I would say like probably historically my team has been the Sacramento Kings.
Interesting.
They are very bad for a very long time. And so real fans are be like, you got to stick through it. And I'm like, no way. Abandoning that over to Golden State. Golden State's great. Super fun.
So I want to do pick, pass, pray, basketball draft of Golden State Warriors.
Hell yeah. Let's go.
So the picks that you have, this is from the history of
Cool.
Golden State.
Cool.
Wilt Chamberlain,
Okay.
okay, played for the Golden State Warriors. Steph Curry,
Yep.
many people know, and then Rick Barry,
Ooh, these are great. These would
famous
be the
for his
three.
underhand free throw.
Correct. Yeah. I'm surprised you didn't pick any from the Fab Five for Chris Mullen or somebody like that. So I'm lefty, so I really like Chris Mullen.
Okay.
Yeah. What is the scenario? Just like my favorite Golden State Warriors,
No.
the best Golden State Warrior.
Let's say you are in desperate need for 2 players to fill out your team, and you gotta pick, pass, and pray for one or the other. You know
Okay.
that you're picking one. You get to pick one, and then you know that one of the 2 will return.
Okay.
So that's like the prey is not like, so you're praying for one of those two to return.
Do
And then,
you have an answer to this question?
yes. I'm not
As he checks his notes.
checks. Yes, looks like it. My answer is Wilt pick.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And I'm praying for Steph to come back. Just
That's crazy.
because I don't know. It seems like the two of them together would be such a dual threat in a
Yeah.
way.
Well, I'm gonna pick Steph Curry. Definitely, one of the greatest basketball players of all time. Warps an entire defense around him. And because of that, he kind of makes his teammates better at the same time. I definitely am going to pray that Wilt Chamberlain comes back around. I do believe Wilt Chamberlain was a bit ahead of his time, although he can't really stretch the floor like bigs can nowadays. But he still is very tall and athletic, so would be great in a pick and roll, catching lobs and protecting the rim. So you can always need that. And then Rick Barry, even though he's like a great scorer, he's not filling a role better than Steph Curry or Wilt Chamberlain. Now, if you're a big Rick Barry fan, please tell me why I am wrong. I would
Call in,
love
folks.
to know it. Yeah. So that's my pick, pass, pray.
Well, that is, I mean, as far as I know, that is a great answer.
As far as you know.
As far
Now,
as,
in an interesting turn of events, Tommy, I also have a quiz for you
what?
to celebrate your momentous Road to Nats runner-up finish with Lavia. It is a Lavia trivia.
Oh
It's
boy.
4 questions long.
Okay.
Are you
Hit me.
prepared? Are you prepared for this?
Hit
Okay.
me.
So, first question. How many Shadow Brew cards have flavor text?
How many Shadow Brute cards have flavor text?
Correct. So just in terms of like, you don't have to think of it as like the reds, the yellows, and the blues, right? So if you were to pick like a number,
Yeah.
you'd be like, you know what I mean? So it's just one of the cycles, one card.
I think 1, 2, and then maybe. Oh,
Shadow Brute, not shadow cards.
jeez. Mm-hmm. I'm
You need a
gonna
hint? I can give you a hint.
give me a hint because I think I'm on the right track, but I need the hint. I think.
Okay. Okay. It's less than 3.
Okay. Yeah, I'm gonna have to go with 2 because I feel like I can think of 2, but I'm
Okay.
not sure. I can open my
It-
deck box real quick now.
It's 1.
Oh, what was it?
Only 1. Can you think of the one card that has flavor text? That's a Shadow Brute card.
My thoughts are my just based on that they don't banish the 3. I'm gonna say either Deadwood Rumbler or Graveling Growl.
It
Or
is
my
Boneyard Marauder.
Boneyard Marauder. Wow.
Yeah. Its flavor text is, it's amazing what you can find when you dig a little deeper. Harland.
That is a great text. That is a great text.
Yeah,
I wouldn't because
totally.
I was thinking that the banish 3 at random would take up too much room, but I guess
Yeah, it's like that and the Blood Debt just takes up all of that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right, I'm 0 for 1.
Okay, well, this leads us perfectly into our next question. How many Shadow Brute cards do not have Blood Debt?
Oh man, I'm thinking of 2
Pawing
off.
your deck box.
Yeah, I'm feeling it. I'm
think.
like I know
Yeah.
there are 2 in the deck, and I'm gonna say because I don't know if I'm like not playing with certain bad ones.
Just trust yourself. That's all I'm saying.
I'm
Just trust
saying
yourself.
2.
Okay. You are correct. There are two. Can you name the two cards for bonus points?
Convulsions from the Bellows of Hell and Unworldly Bellow.
Correct. Boom. Get yourself back on the board with 2 points, getting the bonus points there. That is correct. There are two Shadow Brute cards that don't have blood text, and they are Unworldly Bellows and Convulsions from the Bellows of Hell. Now, we're going to move on to some lore about Levia. How deep does your fandom truly go? Question 3. Which family did Levia get sold to / work for, and in which realm did they live? Was it the northern realm, the southern, eastern, or western realm? So I need the name of the family and which realm that household dwells in.
See, I'm not the best on lore, but something is telling me. Oh, God, I don't remember her name, but lady, like the mentor, Lady Bartholomew, or I want to say Bartholomew, but it's that family, and I do not know what realm. I'm gonna say north. No, I'm not gonna say north. I'm gonna say north.
Okay.
Yeah.
You're totally 100% correct. It is Lady Barthamont.
Barthamont. Yeah.
And their estate is in the northern realm. Great job. Great job there.
Barthamont. I was close. Close.
Yeah, you were totally correct. You're right there. Northern realm. I love it. It's all in like the first paragraph if you look at the lore article for Levia. Okay. Final question. This one is tough.
Okay.
Yeah, I had to have a deep dive here. So here it is. Fourth question. Levia travels to Blasmaphet's plane of existence, where she fights 5 different waves of monsters before she faces off against Blasphemeth's Harbinger. What is the name of Blasmaphet's Harbinger? Now it's a multiple choice. So is it A, Devourer, B, Devour-Tatum, Devoratum, is it C, Devon, or D, Devor? Do you want to hear those again?
No.
Okay.
I think so. I'm gonna right off the bat. I'm not saying Devon, though.
Good choice.
If
It would be
if
funny
it was
though, if it was Devon.
God, Devon, man, it's the Harbinger.
Yeah. Oh, this guy.
I'm gonna say Devor. I think. D.
Okay. You're incorrect.
Ugh.
It is Devoratum. I'm not sure how you really pronounce that. Yeah.
Okay.
It is a frog-like mini teeth-mouthed creature which she basically consumes the whole thing and then is the Levia we know and love now. That's when Chain shows up and is like, "You're pretty cool. Let's go kill everybody." And Levia's like, "Sure. I'm hungry still." So there you go. Great job, Tommy. I think you did really well on that quiz. Those were some hard ones for sure.
Thank you. Now, that was wonderful. Just some more ambush journalism. It's just back and forth between me and you, Taylor.
Totally.
I do want to thank you for coming onto the show for my episode 50. It means a lot to me. You mean a lot to me. You and Isaac mean a lot to me. I look up to you guys, and I enjoyed being on your show, which I would like for you to plug here in a second. And
Yes.
Yeah, and thank you. Just give us tell the world where they can find Taylor, the Battle Bro.
Thank you, Tommy. I really appreciate being on your podcast. So you can find me on Twitter at BattleBroTaylor, and our podcast is the Attack Action Podcast. You can find that on your major podcast platforms: Apple, Spotify, Google. We're also on YouTube, where you can listen to the podcast, and occasionally we do other videos and that sort of thing. I do have an Icelander deck tech coming up. It feels weird doing a deck tech on a deck that doesn't like win a Road to Nats or something. But my hope is that it will inspire somebody, or somebody else who's working on the deck will either confirm some cards or get inspired to do some other stuff. So those are the places you can find me and our podcast. I do want to say, Tommy, that we do not hang out enough. I feel like you're one of my kindred spirits in the Flesh and Blood community, and we are both running our own media empires and don't find enough time to hang out. So I would like to change that in the future for us to just hang out outside of our podcasts if possible.
I would absolutely love that. I'm hoping, I'm hoping that you guys can make it out to North Carolina. I understand it's hard, but if you do,
Well, you just come to Worlds, dude. Same is vice versa. You just come.
I can't do Worlds, unfortunately. I bought tickets to concerts like 2 weeks before they announced it. I would have not done that, but that is okay. We're gonna. I mean, it's gonna happen. It's gonna happen when they do. I don't know, something easy for both coasts to do. They're gonna do like a Pro Tour Denver or something like that, which would be tons of fun.
Yeah,
but
totally. I love Denver.
Yeah. So, no, and we're gonna do it. Now, you all can find me on Twitter at FreshBudsPod. Check out the Discord, the Buds. Hop in there. It's all in the notes. YouTube, subscribe, rate. If you're listening on Spotify or Apple iTunes, rate the podcast and do it to the Attack Action Podcast as well. It helps us become a little more visible, which is great. We love being seen and listened to. So, Now, I always like to end the show talking about a little bit about food, and I also want to ask you, because you guys talk about board games. You like mentioned board games when I was on. And you guys like to talk about board games. What's a board game you've been playing, and what's some food you've been eating?
Okay, so board game I've been playing has only been Flesh and Blood, but the board game that I really love, that's one of my favorites that I wish I got to play more, is Inish. So I've mentioned it on our podcast like maybe 100 years ago, but Inish is this really great game produced by Mataget Games. They're a French publisher. And it's about kind of like medieval England. And it's a dudes on the map area control game. And it has these beautiful components to it. It has like these triangle puzzle pieces that you build the map out of. And it has draft. So that's like one of the best things about it is that you get to deal out the cards and then you draft them, and the cards you have are the actions you can then take for the round you're in. So your armies don't move unless you take actions that move them. You can't build new citadels unless you get the actions that do that, and that sort of thing. And it's really fun. And one of my favorite things about it there's two things that I really love is like combat. You can kind of just both agree to stop at any point. You don't have to just kill everybody. You can just like, wipe off one dude from the map, and then your opponent goes, okay, ouch, too much, uncle, I give. And then you can say, okay, sure, yeah, we will discontinue that. And then the other thing is that like there's this one territory called like the Plains, and it's just this picture of like kind of a foggy, semi-rainy English plain where it just looks like it kind of sucks, and it's like special power is you just leave it. You just leave. And I find that so humorous. There's also a festival. You can be the festival person. It's great. I recommend Inish. It's really, really fun.
I'm looking it up as soon as we're done here. That sounds amazing.
Sweet.
And
food. Okay. Gosh, I don't really know. I have been on a taco kick lately. So we were in Santa Clara, and shout out again to Carlos. Took us to this really great, authentic taco place that was just like, I was one of the only few white people there.
Cool.
And the tacos were so freaking good. And it was just such a fun experience. And then the other day I made tacos at home because those tacos were so good. And then last night we were over at a friend's house and they made us tacos. So I've just been living the taco life right now, and it's great. Love
I get it. When I was in Colorado a couple weeks ago, Southwest food down there, just burritos and tacos, and when they're good, they're good. You know, it's just like
Totally.
they're the best. So it's a good way to end the show. And thank you again, Taylor, and
Oh
everybody.
no, thank you.
You're very welcome. Now, everybody, please have a great week.